My body's always sore, Liam. It's called age. Right, recording good stuff. There we go. Nice. All right then. So Cisco semester 3, lesson number 5 of 6. Like I said, the next lesson is a bit longer than this one, but it's not anymore. None of them are difficult. These are quite short practicals that you need to do just to finish off your topology. Then it's just a case of writing up the assessment. So this is what you've done so far. The only thing you've not done so far is connect. Well, you may have done the connection here. So you're going to connect. You've done this upper section with the routers, and you've done the lower section with the switches, and you may have physically connected them, but it won't work at this point unless you did a workaround, which I was going to tell you a workaround just to get it to test it, but there wasn't really much point. I thought I just as well waiting until this week and then doing it. So yeah, so you may have physically connected them. If not, you're going to be doing that today and fully testing the whole thing. So in the previous lesson, we configured the following features on the topology below. We addressed all the interfaces. So this interface here, 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 and here. And we also did all of the loopback interfaces. So you get 3 here, 3 here, and you did one for the internet, just to a loopback interface to simulate the internet. Configured the EIGRP and all the routers. So in a previous class last year, you learned how to do RIP, Routing Information Protocol. So we upped the game a wee bit and did EIGRP, which is just a different routing protocol. Principally the same as RIP or any of the others for that matter, but it's a bit more advanced with some of the other things that you do. We changed the router host name, so we called this R1, R2, and R3, and that was what we did. All right, so that's what we've done so far. Now we're going to connect it all together and make it work. Today we're looking at this protocol up here, HSRP. So in your topology, you will note that both routers, G01 ports are connected to the LAN. So just a quick look back here. So there you can see there, G01 port and G01 port there are connected to the F05 ports on the switches respectively. Okay. So it would logically follow that one of them would act as a default gateway. Now you might say, well, both of them should be the default gateway, but you can't have 2 default gateways. You can only have one. So remember, all of these switches down here in PCs are on the same LAN and they're connected to 2 routers. So only one of those routers will act as a default gateway. All right. So if I want to talk to the internet over here and I send a signal, electricity goes down the cable from PCA, I'll get to the switch and I'll go to R1, sorry, because this PC will be configured with the default gateway of R1, and then it'll go along here, then EIGRP will kick in, and then it'll pick out the correct route, and it'll go along here, and it'll arrive at the internet, right? If something goes wrong and this breaks, then what happens? Well, the signal will go along here, up through here, down through there, and up through there like that. Instead of taking an alternative route. So the idea here of having 2 routers connected is for redundancy in case there's a problem with one goes down, either the router goes down or the cable breaks. Okay. So the left-hand router's G01 port is 172.27.01. So you configured that. I don't know, was that, well, yeah, you did that last week, I think, didn't you? Yeah. So you configured that last week. The right-hand router is 03. So you get 2 routers that could possibly be default gateways with different IP addresses. So what you could do is, as I said earlier, the workaround would be to change all your PC's default gateways to 01, right? And they would use the left-hand router. But if the left-hand router breaks, you won't get access to the internet, which means you'd have to go in and individually change every single one of those PCs again to 03. And if that's okay if it's only 3 PCs, but imagine there's 300 or 3,000 PCs. Are you going to be able to change all the IP addresses that quick? No. So how would you get it to switch from this router to that router? Well, that you'd have to do it automatically or transparent to the user, so that if that router does go down, the other router will kick in automatically. So the default gateway, if you look at your PCs, the default gateway and all the devices and the switches as well is set to this 172.27.02. And then you look at this and go, wait a minute, how's that? This is 1 and this is 3 and this is something entirely different. So what do we do to make that work? Now, the reason for this apparent mistake, I've put mistake in quotes because it's not actually a mistake, it was wholly intentional, but it looks like a mistake. And is to allow for this redundancy that we talked about earlier. So if one goes down, the other one kicks in. And the technique is known as HSRP, which is Hot Swappable Routing Protocol, or Router Protocol, I should say. Hot Swappable Router Protocol. So the name tells you it swaps. Hot swappable means that you don't have to shut everything down, do the changes, and then power it all back up again. It does it automatically. So the technique protects against a single point of failure for the internet or WAN access, as I've already mentioned. The topology is two routers, so that if one router, the topology is two routers, so that one router will act as a default gateway should the other one fail. So right now in that topology, the left-hand router is the one that's going to be the one that acts as a default gateway. And again, just to reiterate, should it go down, it'll switch to the right-hand one automatically, and you can test this as well. This means that the default gateway IP is actually set virtually, right? I mean, it logically must assume that because you physically set the IP addresses on the PCs, and you physically set the IP addresses on the G01 ports. And so what we have to do then is set it virtually, right? And that's what HSRP is all about, okay? Here's how. So on R1, that's the primary router, which is the one on the left-hand side. Enable config T int G01, and then type in the command standby space 1 space IP space 172.27.02. See? So there's the default gateway there, actually set in all your PCs. And then standby 1 priority 150. Standby space 1 space priority no space 150. And that would be it set. Oh no, sorry, standby 1 preempt, and that would be it set. Okay, that's you set that router as 172.27.02. The next thing you do is on R3, which is the other router connected to the LAN, which can act as a default gateway. Same thing, enable config T int G01, standby IP 172.27.02, standby 1 IP, sorry, and that's it. You should now be able to get access to the outside of the LAN. So if you'd completed that topology last week and connected those cables that we showed you right at the start, so here's the router, here's the router, switch, 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 and these are all connected like this. And if you connected that to there like this and try to access any of those interfaces or the internet, you wouldn't have been able to do it. But once you put these commands in, then you will be able to do it. What will happen is this port here and this port here, which is the G01 ports, this will be configured as the O.2 default gateway. All these PCs have got 0.2, 0.2, 0.2 as a default gateway. So any signals to access outside of the LAN, i.e. to the internet, will go via this router all the time. And what you can do is, once you've set it all up and tested it and it works, what you can then do in Packet Tracer is that you can go to the simulation mode and you'll be able to watch the packets traverse all going that way, and then remove that cable and do it again, and you'll see them all going that way instead. It will still work because it'll automatically switch to that one because that one goes down. So that's how you would test it. So the first thing is configure it like this. Only one command on this. Once you've configured it, test it. Once you've tested it, do the simulation mode to watch it, all the packets going out that one port. Once you've done that, break that connection and then try it again. You'll see them going out that port instead if you've set it all up correctly. And if you do a show run, so this is on G01 router, R1 router, sorry, G01, what am I talking about? Right, so but it's a G01 interface. You see the IP address is 172.27.01, as we mentioned earlier. There's a subnet mask. Forget all that stuff. And then standby 1 IP 172.27.02. There's the settings that we just placed on in the last screen. Right, and then you'll do the same for R2 as well. You can do R2 show run. It's not on the PowerPoint, but it's just, no need to show you that. Oh, I did. Oh, I'm even better than I thought I was. So yeah. So this is R2 and standby 1 IP 172.27.02. See, so that doesn't have all the other stuff that the other one does. And you can see the actual IP address here is 03, the actual IP address. And you can see here it's connected to S3, just to prove that it is actually the R3 router. The exercise is open your previously saved topology and configure hot swappable router on routers R1 and R3, right? Use the worksheet provided. I'll show you where that is in a wee second. Oops, I'll show that is now then, because that's the end of that. So if anybody's got any questions, ask while I'm looking for this worksheet. Let me just leave the mouse lying for 2 seconds. It switches itself off. That's brilliant. Minimize this. Continue here. Back in here. So here's the exercises right here. Open it up. And we did lesson 4 just now, didn't we? Open that. Taking its time to load as usual. There's the topology. So open the topology created in exercise 3 from lesson 4. That's finally loaded up. And then just follow the steps. So step 1, access R1's G01 interface and configure the interface as the primary HSRP interface with the IP address 172.27.02, and then enter the commands in the box below. So that was that's these commands here, right? And then the next part, step 2, access R3's G01 interface and configure this interface as the secondary HSRP interface with the IP address 172.27.02, and that would be this part down here, R3. And then finally, check and double check that you've completed this exercise correctly, then save the topology. Once you've you have one more exercise to complete, therefore it is strongly recommended to maintain your backup strategy. So do a save as. So that means you'll have, at this point now, you should have 4 topologies: exercise 1, exercise 2, exercise 3, and exercise 4. And each one, as you move through them, builds upon the previous one. Okay, so you can go back to any point at any time if you've made a mistake without having to start from scratch. And that would be that. Okay, so open up your topologies, dig out the wee exercise, fill out the commands, do it, test it, and then we'll go on to the next part right after that, okay? So how long do you think you'll need for that? About half an hour? Don't rush out at once.
Yeah, half an hour sounds okay.
Okay. Oh, I'll stop recording that then. Stop recording.